pitch. 2-2 to Noakes.
Some people had predicted a sweep for the Tigers. Or at most 5 games for them. They figured they'd win at least one there and split and come here, and Minnesota wouldn't have a chance with their poor road record. And it's been just a complete flip-flop that a lot of baseball minds thought was going to happen.
Any pitch could be the last. Reardon has it. The Minnesota Twins are in the World Series. Bunch of champions we're looking at here. And their joy is well earned. The last 24 hours, perhaps the longest of Darrell Evans' career, as we saw him on the Tiger bench. The only pity from the Twins' perspective, that it ended here rather than in front of the home fans at the Metrodome. Can you imagine the delirious scene that would have unfolded there?
You know, Bob, on the other side of it, what 2 wins in the opposition park. Harmon Killebrew, the great Hall of Famer, right down there with Tom Kelly. But really, what kind of confidence booster will this be when they play those World Series games on the road, knowing they could come into this park and the relievers could do so well, the Beringers, the Schatzerners, Reardon finishing this one off, and they get all those timely hits. And especially impressive to me is the defensive plays that they made on the road today.
Gaetti and Brunansky, they've grown up together with this team. Brunansky over from the Angel organization early in his career. Puckett and Herbeck and the others.
You never feel good losing, but if there will be a bunch of gracious losers, you just saw a few in your picture. Some of the classiest players in all of sports, when you look at the Travels, the Evans, Sparky, it's obvious. One of baseball's best goodwill people. Don Baylor, who added so much, not just with the game-winning RBI that Bob told you about. Gaetti has been voted the MVP at this point of this really short series, and it's just an amazing, amazing thing. There's Mr. Carl Pohlad, who bought the ball club from Calvin Griffith. A lot of Calvin here. He brought a lot of these kids along with George Brophy, the farm director. It's just a terrific time for the Twins and for the Detroit Tigers. As Sparky said many times when they were winning these 4 ball games, they've just been a better team. Everything they've done has paid off for them. They've gotten the hits. And for Sparky, he knows the strength of his team was the starting staff, and really they didn't get a good start. Or was it the Twins? Any of the 5 that they had in this series.
And just to look ahead a bit, who's to say that the Cardinals won't win 2 at home from the Giants? That's very possible. But if the Giants prevail, can you imagine a more extreme set of home field advantages than the Metrodome and Candlestick Park?
Some of those still in uniform. Chris Patero, who was a former Tiger. Remember Sparky a couple of years ago said, Patero, going to be my second baseman. Mike Smith's in there, who wanted to come along for the ride even though he was not eligible. Joe Niekro, who didn't pitch at all. There's Frank Viola.
Blyleven gets the win, his second of this playoff, and a big continuing story was the inability of the Tiger starters to get the job done, and Alexander, perfect during the regular season for Detroit, went 0-2 in this LCS.
You saw Tom Nieto right there with the jacket on. Tom Kelly insisted that all of those who contributed, even though they're not eligible, come along in uniform. Sparky did the same thing with Whale Wonder, Lusader, Dick Martin, the trainer, getting showered.
And while Kelly will do his best to deflect the credit, so much of it belongs to him with the tone he set for this ball club.
He was tough when he had to be. He had that easygoing demeanor throughout this series. Rarely did we see him squirm, Bob, on the bench. He's so confident.
Speaking of Tom Kelly, he's with Marv Albert. Let's go down to the clubhouse of the American League champion Minnesota Twins.
All right, Bob, and this is Tom Kelly at 37 years of age, the youngest manager in the major leagues. Tom, congratulations. You told me you had the butterflies before game one. I take it the butterflies have departed.
Well, my mouth was awful dry that last inning, and Dick Such said, gee, I can't even feel the roof of my mouth anymore. We were pretty well wiped out in the dugout, and we put it all in Reardon's hand, and he did a hell of a job for us.
Now, going into this series, the Tigers were the big favorites. Did you feel the Twins got lack of respect, and this is something that obviously makes the victory even sweeter?
I don't believe the Detroit Tigers showed us a lack of respect. They knew we had a good ball club. We played them enough through the course of the season, and they knew we could be very tough. And I think maybe the rest of the country didn't give us much chance, and rightfully so. We only won 85 games. They won 98. They played great the last week of the season against Toronto. They deserved to be the favorites, and I was just so glad my ball players put on such a great show for the people across the country and gave us to show off the Minnesota Twins and their fine organization.
And you managed very aggressively. Bob Costas and Tony Kubek discussed that at length today.
Well, we try to be aggressive. We try to entertain the people. As one of our philosophies coming into spring training, we're going to try to take the game to them. Oh, no. And
thanks, Bert. Attaboy.
Bert Blyleven, who won 2 games and had 2 very strong efforts, and also a good effort in getting you.
He's a big horse for us, and you can't say enough about this guy. I wouldn't know where to start. He's an outstanding individual, and he gives you all he's got every time out. He gives up some home runs now and then, but for me, he gets the ball every 4 or 5 days. That's all I can say about him. You got to know him to appreciate him.
All right, Tom, congratulations once again.
Thank you very much, Mark.
All right, Tom Kelly, manager of the Minnesota Twins, who make it to the World Series for the first time since 1965. Don Sutton is alongside Detroit Tiger manager Sparky Anderson.
Well, Marv, as you can imagine, it's a little bit quieter over here. I have Sparky Anderson with me. Sparky, you've been quoted as saying this is your favorite ball club you've ever managed. Does that make this one tougher than the others?
It's my favorite for what they've done, Don. You know, they weren't expected to do anything, and these kids reached back, and they give me everything. As I just told them, you have a nice winter because it's my most enjoyable year. They gave me everything they had, and I just like to say one thing, Don, to Tom Kelly and that ball club over there in Minnesota. They deserve it. They beat up on us in every direction, and they played as good and hard as you can. And their fans in Minnesota, oh, good luck to those 2 National League clubs after going there and listen to that noise.
Well, there were a lot of U-turns in these games. Can you single out one that might have turned the tide against your ball club?
I thought the first game when we went back ahead, and then we ended up losing that first ball game, and that turned the thing around a little bit. But I don't think, Don, nothing turns it around. When a ball club comes out and they come into your own ballpark and they beat you 2 out of 3 there, I always like to think it's nicer for me to feel that they deserve to win and they beat up on us.
Well, what do you have to do with the Tigers over the winter to get back here again next year?
Well, we just go play, Don. You know, to me, I'm one of those people who believe, let's start it on the first day. I always tell them, give me first or give me last, but give it to me. All I want you to do is give it to me, and they give it to me all year, and whatever at the end happens, then to me, I'm always satisfied. I'm satisfied whether it's first or where it is, if they give me everything they've got, and they've done that.
You probably already know when spring training starts in '88, don't you?
Well, the grandkids, I hope, will be glad to have Grandpa home. That's the only consolation out of all of it.
I bet they will. There are a lot of people who say it's just enough to be here, but from the silence you can tell, don't believe it. Bob, back to you and Tony.
And that from Don Sutton, a man who surely knows he was with a team that lost a 3-1 lead, the California Angels, and didn't make it to the World Series a year ago. And as we say so long to Sparky and the Tigers, if you don't like him, who can you like?
It's been a very emotional series, Bob, and the underdog did it, and they're heading for the World Series, and that's important to all of them. They're still looking for the check in the World Series ring.
Game 5 of the American League Championship Series has been brought to you by Miller Genuine Draft, cold filtered draft beer. It's as real as it gets. By the heartbeat of America, today's Chevy truck. By Kentucky Fried Chicken, we do chicken right. And by Radio Shack Computer Centers, in business, for business. The executive producer of NBC Sports is Michael Weissman. The coordinating producer of NBC's baseball is Harry Coyle. Game 5 of the American League Championship Series has been produced by Kenneth Roy Edmondson, directed by Andy Rosenberg. Replay producers David Neal and Ricky Diamond. Ricky Diamond was our producer in Minnesota. John Gonzalez directed the telecast from the Metrodome. Be sure to join NBC Sports tomorrow night as the St. Louis Cardinals with John Tudor attempt to stay in the National League pennant chase with the San Francisco Giants, who will use Dave Dravecky, who beat Tudor with a 2-hitter in Game 2. The pregame show with Marv Albert and Joe Morgan at 8 Eastern Time tomorrow night, and then the game with Vin Scully and Joe Garagiola, the Giants and the Cardinals. Tony, have a good winter, pal.
See you next spring.
For Tony Kubek, for our stat man up in the booth, Steve Horn, I'm Bob Costas. Thanks for being with us this past week. A tip of the cap to the Detroit Tigers, who had a great year. And congratulations to a surprising and awfully happy group of Minnesota Twins, the postseason story of 1987.
A promotional